this is Lauren, and welcome to Human Rights 101. My topic is Human Rights Education and Second Language Writing. This is going to be a bit different, though, than the other presentations, as this is not your typical literature review. That's because there really isn't any literature on this topic. But we will get back to that shortly. To start, let's define human rights. They are the rights you have simply because you are human. But if these are rights we have because we're human, then why do we have to worry about them? Why do we need to teach them? Doesn't everyone already have these rights? The simple answer is yes and no. The road to human rights as we know them hasn't been short or smooth. It started way back in 593 BCE in Persia and continues to this day, but perhaps the most important innovation is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was ratified in 1948. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as I said, was adopted in 1948, and both it and the United Nations were created in response to the horrors of World War II. The Declaration contains 30 articles that were created to protect the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family by promoting a foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. This is a great start, but this declaration is not enforceable by law. An example of some of the rights mentioned in the declaration are those that we're more familiar with: the right to be free and equal, the right to protection under law, but also the right to belong to a country, the right to take part in government and elections, the right to work and to join trade unions, and even the right to have rest and play. Even though the Declaration of Human Rights is not enforceable by law, the United Nations has passed many international conventions and covenants that are legally enforceable. The most important, or the most relevant for our understanding, are the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Both of these were ratified in 1966, and these are the two main documents that are used to help enforce the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But in order to protect human rights, one must first know what they are, and this is where human rights education comes in. Human rights education is the human right to know your human rights. The idea of human rights education was even mentioned in the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Quote, "The General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms." The preamble continues, but that is the most important part for our discussion. So, what is human rights education exactly? It is an international movement to promote awareness about the rights accorded by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the related human rights conventions and the procedures that exist for the redress of violations of these rights. It is training, dissemination, and information efforts aimed at the building of a universal culture of human rights through the imparting of knowledge and skills and the molding of attitudes directed to A, the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, B, the full development of the human personality and the sense of its dignity, C, the promotion of understanding, tolerance, gender equality, and friendship among all nations, indigenous peoples, and racial, national, ethnic, religious, and linguistic groups, and D, the enabling of all persons to participate effectively in a free society. Those are some pretty lofty goals, and so let's break it down into what can be described as the four major fields within human rights education. They are the education for the promotion and realization of human rights, the human right to education, the rights of the child, including education, and the training of professionals in human rights-related professions. We will be focusing on field number 1, education for the promotion and realization of human rights. While human rights education might seem like a huge undertaking, there is a real common core of content in human rights education that we can begin with. The first thing is making sure the students have knowledge of the main international human rights documents, such as the Declaration of Human Rights. It is the combination of human rights and human duties that emerge out of them, the documents, as well as the responsibility of the individual towards the community, society, and the developing world society. Another goal is to create knowledge about human rights violations, including all forms of inequality and discrimination, and to share information about the various forms of resistance, key events, and important persons or organizations within the worldwide struggle for human rights. Along with content, there is a common core of competencies in human rights education that we should look at. Human rights education should lead to an understanding of and sympathy for the concepts of democracy, justice, equality, freedom, solidarity, peace, dignity, and rights and responsibilities. It should also lead to the acquisition of certain basic skills, in particular, skills associated with language development, such as written and oral expression, and the ability. There are 2 basic directions within human rights education. There is learning about human rights, with an emphasis on knowledge, understanding, and valuing, which includes the genesis, history, and relevance of human rights documents, controversies and conflicts of human rights in the international debate, content of the various declarations and conventions, and the realization, instruments, and practice of human rights, national and international actors. Then there is also learning for human rights, with an emphasis on respect, responsibility, and solidarity. Here we're focusing on empowerment, participation in the transformation of community life and society, solidarity and the rights of others, and tensions between adaptations to the established norms of society and the resistance and struggle for the fulfillment of basic rights. Along with human rights education, there are other areas of interest and other disciplines that will help us define the new field of human rights education in second language writing. Many of these fields overlap, and they all contribute to different areas of research within the other. We will focus on critical pedagogy, critical literacy, education for social justice, peace education, and then the outlier in this group, second language writing. The first area we'll look at is critical pedagogy, which is often said to be heavily influenced by Paulo Freire and his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Another current leader within this field is Henry Giroux. He has said that critical pedagogy shows that there is a need to mobilize the imagination and develop a language of possibility in which any attempt to foreclose on hope could be effectively challenged. Giroux's critical pedagogy addresses the democratic potential of engaging how experience, knowledge, and power are shaped in the classroom in different and often unequal contexts, and how teacher authority might be mobilized against dominant pedagogical practices as part of the practice of freedom. Critical literacy is a branch of critical pedagogy. It takes critical pedagogy and applies it to literacy education, so that critical literacy education includes practices that disrupt or critique dominant knowledge-power relationships that perpetuate unequal gender, race, and class relations, and instead center on dialogue, debate, and dissent, features of a democracy. This model shows many of the different features of critical literacy, and a lot of these apply to critical pedagogy, education for social justice, human rights education, and peace education as well. Education for social justice is meant to challenge, confront, and disrupt misconceptions, untruths, and stereotypes that lead to structural inequality and discrimination based on race, social class, gender, and other social and human differences. It is meant to provide all students with the resources necessary to learn to their full potential and to draw on the talents and strengths that students bring to their education. It is also meant to create a learning environment that promotes critical thinking and supports agency for social change. Peace education can be seen as the umbrella for human rights education. It includes educational policy, planning, pedagogy, and practice that can provide learners in any setting with the skills and values to work towards comprehensive peace. As seen in the model, along with human rights education, other aspects of peace education include cultivating inner peace, living in harmony with the earth, living with justice and compassion, dismantling the culture of war, and building cultural respect, reconciliation, and solidarity. While all of the aforementioned fields are noble endeavors, there are no doubt challenges that are associated with all of them. These challenges are real and must be explored, no matter how uncomfortable. Within human rights education, some of the challenges include sensitive material, xenophobia and prejudice, both among students, teachers, and society, the creation of conflict, both in the classroom and outside, the broaching of difficult issues, triggers, and cultural insensitivity or sensitivity. So we've come all this way and haven't really gotten to second language writing yet. Why? As I mentioned before, this is the gap. There has not been any research done on human rights education in second language writing, or any at least that is available or has been published. Until now! Human rights education is a broad field, but it still needs expanding. Within human rights education, there are traditional areas of research, and these are also generally the traditional areas of research within critical pedagogy, peace education, and education for social justice. They often take place in K-12 settings. They're generally discussing courses that are purposely designed for human rights education, and many times national policy implementation is the end goal. Some of the areas for expanding or initiating research in human rights education are post-secondary settings, such as the university, second and foreign language settings, and the use of human rights education as a thematic organizer rather than as the main goal of the class itself. Also, of course, second language writing. So why combine these seemingly unrelated topics, human rights education and second language writing? My goal as a second language writing teacher is to provide my students with meaningful assignments and topics. In the first year second language writing classroom at the university, my context, and in other second language writing classroom contexts, students are often learning about abstract composition concepts and then being asked to apply them to seemingly random topics. Topics such as, should cell phones be allowed in the classroom? Should smoking be allowed on college campuses? Is social media harmful to students' personal relationships? While these are important topics to understand, I wanted to push my students further. I thought, why not have them focus on topics that can help them expand their worldview and raise awareness about current critical issues? With these thoughts in mind, I turned to theme-based course design when planning my syllabus. Theme-based course design means to provide a meaningful conceptual framework and context, create student interest, motivation, involvement, and purpose, and provide optimal content, language, and literacy learning opportunities. When creating a theme-based course, one must think about the meaning and purpose of the course, building on prior knowledge of the students, integrating learning opportunities with learning about the topic, scaffolding for support both within language and in the content, collaboration among students, variety in ideas, and allowing students to make choices to give them personal investment. All of these ideas mesh well with the concepts of human rights education.
While themes are of course important in theme-based course design, the main goals of the course itself cannot be forgotten. On that note, we turn to the field of rhetoric and composition to look at the Council of Writing Program Administrators, National Council of Teachers of English, and the National Writing Program's Framework for Success in Post-Secondary Writing. They created this document to define college readiness for composition students. While this may not have been created explicitly for second language writers, it clearly applies as they fit into the post-secondary writing context. We can also easily see how a human rights education theme-based writing course can fit into this framework. I'm not going to read all of the habits of mind that they mentioned, but I will go over a few that are very relevant to our context. For example, curiosity, the desire to know about the world. Openness, the willingness to consider new ways of being and thinking in the world. Engagement, a sense of investment and involvement in learning. Responsibility, the ability to take ownerships of one's actions and understand the consequences of those actions for oneself and others. And metacognition, the ability to reflect on one's own thinking as well as on the individual and cultural processes used to structure knowledge. These habits of mind, according to the writers of the framework, refer to ways of approaching learning that are both intellectual and practical, and that will support student success in a variety of fields and disciplines. So, in conclusion, we can achieve both the goals of a composition course and the goals of human rights education at the same time by combining them into one human rights theme-based writing course. Now let's look at ways that I have actually incorporated human rights education into my second language writing first year composition course. In Unit 1, we do a rhetorical analysis of political cartoons, where students are learning about rhetorical strategies and situations, and also about the basics of human rights and human rights education topics. They then apply these rhetorical strategies to political cartoons that are about human rights. In Unit 2, they're going to choose an article from the Declaration of Human Rights and do a little bit of research about that article. After that research, they choose a human rights issue or violation related to that article, which they want to pursue further. They research that topic and write a balanced analysis of the sources, focusing on the rhetorical strategies and choices of the authors, combining both human rights knowledge and rhetorical awareness. In Unit 3, they take the same topic from Unit 2, but students are now expressing their own views on this topic in a particular genre. They practice genre and rhetorical awareness by thinking about what message they want to send about their topic and what the best genre and venue would be for them to get that message across. And in Unit 4, the final unit, they revise and reflect on the semester. With this revision, they transform their Unit 3 assignment into a more visual genre, for example, a website or a newspaper article, or rather, from a newspaper article into a website, or a brochure, or a poster, or even an app. These are just some examples of the visual genre choices my students have made in the past. In their reflection, they then reflect on the transformation processes from Unit 2 to 3, going from the controversy analysis to the public argument, and from Unit 3 to 4, going from the public argument to their new genre and reflecting on it. This is the very beginning of the field of human rights education in second language writing, so there are many future directions in which research can go. We need to develop the best practices for this field. We need creation of sample or template curriculum or syllabi that teachers can use to implement these ideas into their courses. We need to share these ideas and the idea of using human rights education as a theme for second language writing classrooms and other situations where it's not so commonly found. And also, we need to collaborate with colleagues to unite second language writing with fields related to human rights education, such as education, literacy, history, sociology, etc. And finally, publish, and hopefully that might happen soon. I would like to close with some hopeful words from Eleanor Roosevelt, who is one of the creators of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Quote, "Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places close to home. So close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world." On a similar note, it is International Human Rights Day this Saturday, December 10th. For more information on that, and if you would like to learn how to take action, visit this year's website, standupforhumanrights.org. And thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you have questions, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Thank you.